Hi, in this tutorial we're gonna add even some more offline functionality to our app. First of all, we have to work on our local machine and we cannot actually use CodePen anymore because this involves some extra steps and service workers which don't work with CodePen. So to get started, first of all, we have to have a server, and the very easiest way to do that is simply use this command to install the HTTP node HTTP server. We just type in npm install HTTP server and give it a global flag. I already have it, so this output is going to be a little bit different for you, but the steps are exactly the same. And then we're going to start the server with this command, http-server. And that's it. Just click on the link. If you're on a Mac, just hold the command key and click on one of those two URLs, and it will automatically open. Okay, once it's done, let's look at the code which we have. I'm using the Atom editor, so you can use whatever you want, just make sure that the code is exactly the same. First of all, let's check the index.html file. The structure and the head is basically exactly the same as we used in all other examples. Just we have the bootstrap right here and our custom CSS right here. Inside the body, we have the container as the wrapping div around all of our content. Inside the container, we have two forms. We have refactored the app a bit to include the login as an extra step before the message can be submitted. I think just at this point it makes more sense to have our app working in a proper way. So the first form is called JS login form. The second form is JS message form. The login form has two input fields. One is email and the other one is password. The JS message form has only one field, and it is the message. We're going to have the event listeners attached to the forms themselves, so we don't need a lot of extra classes or codes or IDs put to the button or this input type button. However, we have to select the input fields, and we're gonna do that by using JS email and JS password for the input form and JS message for the message form. Just notice that they are all classes and not IDs. Okay. Then comes the very important part, the scripts which we load. First of all, the first script is just jQuery. Okay, so I'm using the jQuery from the CDN. I'm using the third version of jQuery, the new one, and this is how they recommend to load it. Then I'm using the local forage. This is a library which helps us to work with the local storage and IndexedDB, and basically kind of provides a fallback for, provides an API for easier working with the offline storages and fallback for older or not supported browsers. Okay, then we have two internal two files, like local files. One is Firebase.js, the other one is offline.js. So offline is our custom script. What is the Firebase.js? So before we served Firebase using the CDN2, but now we have switched to the locally hosted version just for one reason, that there was some issues with caching the CDN version of Firebase. Okay, so just for this reason, I have downloaded the Firebase JavaScript file and placed it inside our root directory. Okay, so it shouldn't be very hard to do. Just follow this link, this an alternative link, copy it in your browser. It will open a JavaScript file, copy all the text, and paste it inside a JavaScript file inside your local directory. So then we have this IndexedDB covered. Let's look at the offline.css. So the CSS is very simple. It stays exactly the same as in the previous tutorial, just we add some padding to the container element. Okay, that's it. So we can close that. Let's move to a little bit more important and interesting stuff. So first of all, let's look at the offline.js. Since it's the last file we import, and we are not importing anything else inside it, we have to look at that now. Okay, so take a look at the first 7 lines. This is how we register a service worker. Okay, so don't mind anything else, just look at this code. Basically what we do is we check if this property service worker exists in our navigator object. Then what we do, we register using the register method on the service worker. We register the file sw.js as our service worker. Okay, and if it is successful, we are logging out service worker is registered. Service workers are not universally supported, so make sure that you're using the latest Chrome browser or Mozilla or Firefox for service workers to work. Okay, so right now let's look into this sw.js file and let's look at the code. So we have 2 event listeners inside here, and we have a special keyword named self. Okay, so self basically is the instance of the service worker itself. Okay, so we are adding event listeners to it, and we have 2 event listeners. First one is install. It's run only once then the service worker is installed. And the second one is called fetch. It's run every time the browser fetches some external or local resources. Okay, so first of all, the install has this kind of weird syntax. It has this e parameter, and we are calling this method wait until. Then inside it we supply the caches open method, which returns a promise, which then itself has a callback, and what this callback does is caches all of these files, right? So how I got the list of these files, basically it's the index.html itself and the root directory. Then it's the bootstrap CDN, right? Then the offline CSS, and then the 4 JavaScript files which we had in index.html, right? So 4 JavaScript files. Okay, and that's it. That's how you cache all the files in this case which I have. Okay, so caching is not enough. We have to serve the local version if it is available under all the fetch requests. Okay, so we do that by adding this event listener to the self called fetch, and what we do, we check if we have this event request in the cache, and if we do, we just deliver it. If we don't, we make a fetch request which just gets this file externally, right? So this part is, this can only work inside, like on, this can only work online. This is the offline version, right? And if there's an error, we are just logging it out, okay? So that's basically all about service workers. Let's look at our app code. So we are wrapping again everything inside, everything except the service worker registration inside this callback for jQuery, right? So everything is wrapped in here. And let's see what we have. We have this function app init, okay? We have another function, push to Firebase. We have another function, login form submit, and we have another function, message form submit. Then, just after defining all of these like long functions, we basically have 3 lines of code. Those are, first of all, we are initializing our app. Then we have 2 event listeners for the login form submit and the message form submit, okay? So on login form submit, we have the login form submit function as a callback, and message form on submit has this message form submit callback, okay? So I think we can, like, we really should understand this code. Let's look into the app init because it's going to be the most important one. So app init has just the state is like, first of all, what you notice is that the state is an object again, but has fewer properties. It has just one is connected property, right? And basically, if you really wanted, we could have gotten around without this state, but I think it serves its purpose, so let's leave it. What we do then is initialize the Firebase as before, and have this connection reference stored as a variable, okay? Then we have a function called local forage to Firebase, which basically like it will run when we are back online, and what it does, it checks if we have messages, if we are connected, and if we have a user, okay? So if all of these are true, it pushes these messages one by one to the Firebase, okay? After it does that, it uses setItem of the local forage object to have the offline messages variable set to an empty array, okay? So what changed from the previous version, we have moved the offline messages from the state to this local forage. The reason why we did that is we want the messages which were offline be stored even if like somehow our like browser got refreshed, or if it got turned off, right? So if you have like a form which which a lot of users have filled, and you have like hundreds of offline messages, and one user just accidentally refreshes your browser, it will be all lost in the previous version. Right now they are all safely stored inside this. It depends really on what kind of browser you're using, but in case of Chrome, it's stored inside IndexedDB database, and whenever you are reconnected to the internet, it will automatically push all of these messages to the Firebase. Okay, so that's pretty robust like offline solution. One kind of warning, it's not, there's no best way to do that, and there are some quirks like some error messages because Firebase doesn't really respond super well of being cached. So basically, if you see some error messages, don't worry. If it works, you shouldn't like be worried by these error messages. Okay. So this function, as I said, just moves this messages array from the local or whatever to the Firebase and clears the local forage offline messages variable. Okay. Then we are connected. What we do, like remember this connection reference on value, right? So that means the connection state has changed. So what we do is then we are connected or disconnected from the internet. We get this local forage get item, right? Offline messages, that means we are getting an array of messages from this local forage. And then when we have gotten these messages, then we are calling the local forage to Firebase function, right? This function right here, and we are passing the messages, these offline messages, right? So basically what that means, if we are connected to the internet, reconnected I mean to the internet, we're gonna call this function, we're gonna check if there is some messages, if the state is connected, and if we have a current user, and if it's all true, we're gonna push those messages to Firebase. If on the other hand we have just disconnected from the internet, we are going to call this function again, but this time state is connected, it's gonna be false, so it will just like nothing will happen. Okay. The same story goes with when the user is like when the user has logged out or logged in. So if the user has just logged in, so we call the function again, the exact same function, local forage to Firebase with the offline messages. This time we are just again checking if it's connected to the internet and if it has like current user and if there are some messages, pushing those messages to the Firebase. And basically the last statement of this function is returning the state. So state is this is connected, right? So we have all these event listeners. Let's see what the other functions do. So push to Firebase, we have extracted this function to just an easier way to push to Firebase. We are basically like pushing messages one by one to Firebase. We have this login form submit and message form submit. You'll see that those are like so much simpler than before. What we do is, first of all, we prevent default, we get the email and password, and we are just using the sign in with email and password method. We are not interested in like catching errors or getting users or doing something after that. It will all be handled by these event listeners on of state changed, right? So if a user has just logged in, what will happen is we are removing the class hidden from the message form and we are adding class hidden to the login form. Okay, and if a user has just logged out, that means we are showing or removing class hidden from the login and adding hidden to the message form, right? So we don't really care about that in this login form submit function. On the message form submit, we are doing a bit more. So first of all, we are getting the message itself. Then if we are connected, right, if we are connected, then we push to Firebase. If we are not connected, we are pushing to the local forage. Okay, so what we do is, first of all, we get the messages, we get all the messages, then we set this offline messages to be these old messages, right? We are spreading the old messages and we are adding the new message. It looks like that I have forgot to add one extra line of code to handle the case when our messages are null. Okay, so we're gonna do that by just creating a new variable called msg, and this variable depends on either the messages. So the messages can be either an array or it can be null. So if it's an array, then you're using basically this code, and if it's null, we are creating a new array, and inside it, it's just gonna be this message. Okay, so and I'm storing this array inside the offline messages, right, as offline messages. So it looks all set now. I'm going to save it, and I'm going to switch to Chrome now. This is our Chrome, our site. It's served by our server. You can see that the service worker is registered. We have to navigate to the application tab, right? And we see that under the service worker that we have the service worker right here. Okay, so to make sure that the updates were like implemented, I'm just going to click unregister. That this basically deletes the service worker, and I'm going to refresh the page. Okay, so the latest version of a service worker is now served. Okay, so it fixes the bug which I have encountered previously. Don't worry about it, it's all fixed now. Okay, so first of all, we have to log into the Firebase itself. To do that, we just enter our credentials, click submit. It's all good. It's like like registered, like logged into the Firebase now. Okay, inside the Firebase, let's delete the previous messages to have like a good clean starting point. And let's try a few messages, like 1, 2, let's see if they work. Okay, so I can immediately see that 1 and 2 have appeared under the Firebase console. That's all good. Let's try to get it working offline now. So Service Workers has this offline mode capability. It's very useful. It basically makes your browser think that it's offline. However, there is the Firebase itself has a workaround around it, and what we're gonna do is not only we're gonna like click this offline, I'm also going to disable my Wi-Fi to like make sure that it's 100% not connected to anything. Okay, so I'm adding 4 and 5 as like 4th and 5th messages, and what I'm going to do now is reload the page. So I'm clicking the reload shortcut, and what happened is, even though the page is like we are not connecting to the internet, it still is showing everything like nice and good. And the reason for that is because we have everything cached, right? This is the cache storage of all of our files, which the service worker has cached. And also the service worker is serving these files because it's like it assumes we are not connected to the internet. Okay. Also, the messages are stored inside the indexed DB, and you can find them under the key value pairs. You can see that we have offline messages 4 and 5. Let's add 2 more after the page was refreshed. Okay, so 6 and 7. They do not appear like immediately. You have to click this like refresh button, but right now you see that we have like 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, you can like reload again. You can see everything's like reloaded. You can add 8 and 9. Okay, and check again. We have all of these like 6 messages. Then let's reconnect to the internet. Okay, I'm going to like enable my Wi-Fi again. Also, I'm going to like disable this offline mode. Okay, what's going to happen is as soon as it's connected to the Firebase, all of these messages are going to be pushed in the correct order to the Firebase. So this is how you create like a robust offline solution with also the Firebase as a backend. And let's check these key value pairs again. Let's refresh it. You'll see that this like offline messages are empty now because we have been pushed to the Firebase. Okay, so that's it. Check out the service worker file and the offline.js file.